All right. So people I am sure are going to trickle in over the next few minutes, but I'd like to get started. As I said before, this is a developing partner section presentation. We are lucky enough to have Bob Wiesner with us today. He's the founder and managing partner of the Artemis Partnership. By my count, if I can do math correctly on the fly, he's been in the training, consulting, marketing space for coming up on 30 years. He's made billions of dollars in pitches to for Olympic bids, to Ernst & Young, Deloitte & Touche, Hewlett Packard, Sun Microsystems, Bank of America, American Express, DuPont, every big corporation you've ever heard of. And if I were to describe him in two words, they would be impressive AF. Uh, So we're very lucky to have Bob today. He's going to be speaking about expanding your connections beyond just the general counsel to the entire C-suite of a business and entrenching your relationship and your roots with the business and a number of interesting things. A couple of announcements before we get going. One is, again, at Primaris events, we often start with a few minutes of introductions. We're not going to do that because we want to get right to Bob's content, but you are very much welcome and invited and encouraged to put in the chat your name, your firm name, your location, your practice area. And second announcement is that the next developing partner section networking event is going to be March 6th at 11 Eastern. So please mark your calendars for that. And with that, I yield the floor to Bob. Take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. And Ryan, thank you for giving me an inspiration for my business cards. I'll have to have them reprinted now. Get approval of my partners that I can actually use that job title instead of managing partner. I like it. I like it better. So we've got a lot of content to go through, as Ryan mentioned, and so there'll be some of the content that I'd like you all to participate in. There'll be several opportunities to share your thoughts either through the chat box or through a breakout sessions that Bree has helped organize. So you'll see those upcoming. And with that, I'm going to just dive into what we want to talk about. So I'm going to hope at this point that you are all seeing a title slide. That's C-Suite Conversations. Is that correct?
Yep.
Terrific. You heard a little bit about me. Let me just tell you just a couple of things about the Artemis Partnership, the firm that I am the managing partner of. We focus only on working with clients who want to win more high-stakes competitive opportunities at higher profit margins and improve ROI on their business development efforts. Our client roster is now almost entirely professional services firms with quite a few law firms among that total. The way we do this, and I could talk for hours on it, but I'm only going to talk for 30 seconds, is by helping our clients gain a deep understanding of how buying decisions are often really made. And that enables our clients to build stronger relationships with their prospects and their current clients, to know what really matters to them, to create real differentiation in professional services sectors that are oftentimes viewed by clients as highly commoditized. And then they can pursue their opportunities with what we call greater intensity, greater purpose. And let me tell you that that level of purposefulness is very apparent to prospects when they are reviewing firms that they're considering bringing on. They can tell which ones really care and which ones are kind of going through the motions. The result of all of that is that we generate higher win rates. On an annualized basis, our clients, depending on the last 4 years, have been averaging between 60 and 70% win rates, which we're very, very proud of for them. So that's who we are. Now let me tell you why this is relevant to you and how you should be thinking about the information we're going to be bringing forward to you. You're all familiar with McKinsey. If you don't subscribe to their newsletters and their online magazines, you ought to. This article appeared in the July 2022 issue of one of McKinsey's publications. It was headlined, "Choosing to Grow, the Leader's Blueprint," which attracted our attention right away because growth is what we help our clients achieve. It was a long article with a lot of really impressive research baked into it, but I'm going to give you a real quick summary of their key findings. And that's in this slide called the Blueprint for Growth, um, calling out 3 specific areas that seem to correlate at a very high level with firms that grow at the highest rates. One of these 3 areas is very, very relevant, has proven to be very relevant to our professional services clients, and that's this middle one called Activate Pathways. In fact, in the research done by McKinsey, as you can see, companies are 97% more likely to outperform their competitors when they invest in multiple pathways for growth, multiple pathways for growth. So the question that you're probably asking yourselves is, what does this have to do with law firms? What are our multiple pathways for growth? You can easily see this would be different areas: real estate, mergers and acquisition, litigation, and so on. Fine, you have different verticals within your firm, but there's another way that successful organizations think about multiple pathways, and that is access points through their client to decision makers. So for example, a typical law firm, this may be yours, there is a standard path to revenue. There's a standard path to business. The lawyer, the firm operates through the GC, and that leads to the chance to bid on or be assigned a matter, or perhaps have an opportunity to become a retained resource for them. A single pathway, common, but what else would represent this multiple pathways idea? Well, how many firms, how many lawyers are comfortable with going not just through the GC to obtain opportunities for growth, but also go through the equivalent of the C-suite? Use the CEO, the CFO, the chief operating officer, the chief accounting officer, the chief investment officer. These are all potential access points to relationships that can lead to growth by law firms. Now, we're accustomed to talking to firms and finding out that they're not necessarily all that comfortable talking to senior leaders at individuals outside of the general counsel. And that's a potential opportunity that's being lost. And it's an opportunity that might be now taken advantage of by your competitors. So whether you're a big firm or a small firm, having multiple relationships outside of just the general counsel, and I'm not discounting the importance of the GC, I'm talking about the GC and others, having multiple relationships gives you access to people who really do care about legal issues. The C-suite in all businesses, and we talk to the C-suites regularly. I'll share some of that information with you shortly. They're sensitive to the legal implications to their core business strategies and the decisions that they'll make. Some of you may have felt the influence of consultancies now as a threat to the law firm, as consultancies try to find their own new pathways to revenue. Because some firms, both law firms and the larger consultancies, have relationships with the C-suite outside of the general counsel, they have these dialogues with their clients and prospects continually around the connection of legal matters to business strategies and business outcomes. And that makes them potentially a threat. We always want to remind people that we talk to about this point that's on the screen. Your best clients are everyone else's best prospects. So, can we mute there, please? Thank you. This means that if you're not protecting your current relationships by not only strengthening the relationship with the general counsel or whoever heads legal issues for your client, but also having strong relationships outside the general counsel, your current client business might be in a bit of jeopardy. Relationships with the C-suite, we believe, give you a competitive edge no matter who you're up against. Whether you're in pursuit of new business, whether you're trying to grow your current relationships, whether you're trying to protect your current relationships, we believe that firms that have relationships outside of the general counsel are in the strongest possible positions. So we're going to talk today about what we call a grow and defend strategy. How law firms can be a valued resource to the C-suite. There's three areas we want to talk about today. First, I'm going to go over foundational truths of business development in competitive markets. I'm going to talk about what you might encounter in the C-suite, what their mindset is. And then we'll talk about some specific offensive and defensive strategies that you can consider adopting at your firm. Let's start with foundational truths. What is business development like in highly competitive markets? There's research that I've been involved with for nearly 30 years, beginning in the late 90s with a firm called Rogen SI, continuing into the 2010s when Rogen SI was acquired by a firm called TTEC. And when TTEC dropped this research, we picked it up with the Artemis Partnership. Regularly, this research involves interviews with about 3,000 senior executives who have selected providers in competitive situations. And they're asked a series of questions on why did they choose the firms that they chose, and how did they eliminate the firms they eliminated. Now, I grant you this goes across all professional services, not just law, but law was, of course, included in the research. There are four areas that continually have come up over the years as defining the selection criteria. There's what we call the solution that's being offered, which is expertise, experience, pricing, teams, credibility, capabilities, all the technical stuff, the tangible stuff that might appear on your website or might be written up in an RFP. There's something called, by the decision makers, that I selected a firm that understands me, not just what I published in the RFP or what we discussed in a very formal briefing session, if there was no RFP, but they got to know me as a person, and they knew what my own concerns, objectives, desires, fears are. They knew me beyond just the business matter at hand. A third criteria, not surprisingly, is chemistry. I like them. I get along with them. I can speak with them easily. I communicate freely with them. They communicate easily with me. We understand each other. And the fourth area, maybe it'll surprise you, maybe it won't, is politics. Perhaps you've run into that from time to time. Now that's internal politics. What looks good? How will I look if I recommend this firm? How will it look to my bosses, to my shareholders, to ownership? And it could be macro politics. You know, what's going on in the government right now that might lean me towards one type of provider versus another. So 4 different criteria, never really varied. The question on the table then is, what's the different percentages that might be assigned to each of these? What's the weighting that you might anticipate seeing in a competitive pursuit? Well, I don't know if it'll surprise you or not. You can put your comments in the chat box, but these are the percentages that we've seen in our most recent survey. We just completed this in late 2023. We haven't even fully processed the numbers, but I wanted to share with you the raw data that we have. A solution is important. It's important what your pricing is. It's important what your experience is. It's important what your credentials are. But it's a little more than a quarter of what what a decision is. It's, not even half, and much less than that. A good part of your probability of winning comes from your ability in a competitive pursuit to score, let's say, score the highest or be the most noteworthy in these areas of how well you understand decision makers, how well you know what really matters, how well you understand their business, how well you understand their challenges and their threats, the kind of chemistry you can develop with your clients. That number, by the way, 24%, was higher before the pandemic. But it's now harder to generate chemistry with clients. So clients are telling us essentially that they've devalued it a little bit because they give you the benefit of the fact that I don't see you in person. So maybe we don't get to know each other that well. Politics has actually gone up a little bit over the years, but these relative proportions have stayed the same over the years. So the first question that we want to put to you for your input to us is essentially this: do these numbers apply to your business pursuits? And what would you do about your business pursuits at your firm if you believe that these numbers are in fact accurate? If you believe they apply to the business that you're trying to bring into your firm. Put your comments in the chat box, if you would, please. You could say that this is very much what we currently are anticipating. You could say that we may be putting too much emphasis on the solution, on the technical aspects of our capabilities. You might say that we believe chemistry is important, but we don't know how to get it. Let's take a look and see how you relate to these numbers. Okay, Ryan is saying, surprised the hot politics is in a higher percentage. We're at the GC, but the GC is going to say, no matter how the case goes, I can do no wrong because I hired big firm ABC. That's very common. There used to be an expression back in the day that nobody ever got fired by hiring IBM. And we think that thinking hasn't gone away. Thank you, Ryan. Beaker says, considering the cultural component, all these aspects are important in Mexican business culture. Win trust and then win business. Trust may come first. We can talk in a separate webinar about what really earns you trust, how to activate trust in your clients and prospects, and what that would do to your ability to leverage this information. Extremely important. Anne says, surprise, the solution is so low. Now keep in mind that this is an average across 3,000 respondents. And this is their self-assessment, their responses to us. In any one particular pursuit, solution could be 72%. It could be 92%. Our concern at Artemis is that you're open-minded about what the weights might be, and therefore you're willing to investigate and perhaps account for what could be different than what you're expecting. Julian, we tend to think about the solution. There's a gap between the founder partners and the new generation, more difficult for the latest to build these personal relationships. That's a lot to unpack in there. I wonder if the difficulties are related to the inability to get in front of people because of remote work, whether that's because the founding partners are protective of relationships and not necessarily bringing in other team members. That's, again, something worth considering in further discussion. Okay, so we can see that there's some understanding about what these implications might be. Iker asks this, I'll take this and then I'll move on. Seems like politics, chemistry, and understands me are skills that are separate from product design or solution. Is that correct? They absolutely are. They are sadly often called the soft skills, as if they don't matter. They're really, the terminology is meant to distinguish it from technical skills, which is essentially your legal knowledge. To say they're soft skills, we think undervalues their importance. They are extraordinarily at the forefront of decision making, as this research seems to show, and therefore they need to be understood on the basis of the behaviors that you exhibit that would be interpreted by your client as showing that you understand me, as showing that we have chemistry, as showing that you recognize politics. So there are activities and behaviors that will be interpreted as representing the presence of or lack of these elements. And they are definitely learnable. So again, a further discussion at a later time, but very important for you. So thank you for that. If you have the questions about this that comes up, please let me know. Drop in the chat box. Bree will keep an eye on them. But with that as kind of a foundational truth as to how decisions are made, we're going to tell you why this matters to the C-suite. And you know what to talk with them about. First of all, what we're trying to impress upon our clients is that your best chance of generating that 72% win rate, the one on this slide, comes from acquiring the most amount of understanding you can about the business you are pursuing, about the firm you are pursuing. The GC will tell you some of that, all that the general counsel knows, but the opportunity to gain broader perspective, much more potentially, much more meaningful perspective, will come from your C-suite conversations beyond the general counsel. In order to have those successful conversations in which you're both going to extract information from them, as well as give them information, which is going to create a favorable impression, you have to have a reason to go see them. You have to understand why they might want to talk to you and not simply shunt you off to the general counsel. Here's what we understand from our conversations about what the C-suite cares about. Any top-level executive in any organization is faced with internal pressures and external pressures, right? They can come in any of these flavors. They might have to do with the market environment, the competitive environment, with operational performance, with strategic intent. Many things are on their minds, not specific to legal matters, but extraordinarily important to the success of their business, their ability, in many cases, just to keep their jobs. Because of that high degree of importance, executives will accept thinking from any trusted source that can help them better navigate and understand markets, competitors, operations, strategy, finances, etc. And you don't have to have the name Deloitte on your business card in order for them to want to hear from you. If you can establish an understanding about what might be facing that business, and we'll talk about that in a couple of minutes, you have an opportunity to have that conversation. Even a small Primaris firm can do that. These requirements to get a better understanding of internal and external factors has been amplified since the pandemic. And you may have heard the expression, the acronym of VUCA before, right? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. There is nothing that's more volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous than the business environment in the first quarter of 2024. Whether it's the political arena, whether it's war, whether it's AI, whether it's hiring and retention of talent, whether it's recession, whether it's energy prices. Things are going on all over the place that your business leaders at your clients and your prospects are struggling with on a daily basis. They want understanding, guidance, and ideas as to how to think about this VUCA world and how to navigate through it. And as I said before, they will take it from anybody. They'll take it from anybody who can offer them something of value. Now, your insights on these business issues, and you have them, you absolutely have them, and how they might impact legal matters can be significantly valuable to the C-suite beyond the general counsel. Yes, to the general counsel, but also to CEOs, COOs, CFOs, etc. So this is your leverage point. This is your access point. The opportunity to have conversations with senior executives outside of the general counsel about issues that would probably affect them and to share with them your perspectives. And you have them. Now, before we move any further, Bree, we're going to go into our breakouts. And what I would love you to discuss for no more than about 4 minutes in each of your breakouts, where you can set the time for us, I think, is this question. What are the issues facing the C-suite at your clients or prospects? Don't give away anything confidential, of course, but what do you see as potential issues that they would love to get some guidance on? Whether you can provide it or not is not yet the issue, but just issues that they're really struggling with. Okay, so Bree, let's set up our breakouts and give each group about 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Zoom. There we go. All right, 20 seconds. All right. Hey,
I've turned off the slide in case anybody's wondering where it went.
all right, we're all back.
Great. Now we don't have time to discuss whatever each room discussed, but I would throw this general question out for a verbal response, not for the chat feature, which is anything that was uncovered in your room that you felt was, wow, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way before.
I guess I would just volunteer from our room. We talked a lot about volatility, in our respective practices in our respective locations. There's a lot of volatility, but something that Omar from Turkey and our group said really struck me, which is that their day-to-day business is really impacted by the sanctions against Russia, and how you have to think about that very, very frequently in their business. And that's not frequently on my mind, based on my practice. But, depending upon where you are, your interest can be so very different.
Thanks, Ryan and Omar. That's a classic example, beautiful example of what we're looking for here. The opportunity to show an understanding of business issues that go beyond just the typical or the expected or even the priority legal issues that law firms might only focus on. But taking a broader perspective like this can really put you in a good position with both the general counsel and with others within the firm. So thank you for that. Any other examples? Did any rooms struggle with the idea of what are business issues that might be affecting our clients? So it sounds like, yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So not in our group, like we initially the discussion was like, I finding it hard to understand, like to identify or pinpoint something. Like this is something that you need to meditate on before you come up with an answer. But then as we moved on the discussion, more and more things were coming up. And the type of things that we discussed is in the case of Mexico, nearshoring and the pros and cons behind it, the upcoming elections, and whatever you can provide us to valuable information in connection to that uncertainty, digital fluency and the uses of artificial intelligence, for instance. And then someone said, I was working for the government before I joined my firm, and I think that is a strategic value. The government perspective on things can be something that they would find interesting.
Yeah, a great example. And by the way, that kind of process of how you uncover ideas is exactly what we would expect to see when you start thinking about something like this that you might not have been thinking about. I'm going to give you a more formal process to follow and bring back to your firm if you're interested in this as we close today's webinar. So hang on with me. So thank you for all of that. Let's get back into the content because we still have quite a lot to discuss. Let me find the next slide. Here we go. So I think we're back on a PowerPoint slide that says, be a trusted source of information and expertise to your clients. I want to talk about this idea that I threw out earlier of insights. Can you bring insights to both the general counsel and elsewhere within the leadership team of your client and prospect organization? Insights are defined, in our perspective, as facts, observations, perspectives, hypotheses that can expand, confirm, or challenge one's thinking. And they can be made explicitly relevant to the C-suite that you're addressing. So an insight that mothers like to protect their babies when they're driving in a car may be true, but is that relevant to a C-suite executive wrestling with the effects of recession? But an insight on what is that going to mean to that company that is trying to expand relationships with young families might qualify as being a relevant insight worth discussing. What we find is that an insight can motivate one, in this case, the C-suite, to learn more or consider an action. An insight provides or defines your role as being a portal to advice that can help the C executive. It doesn't matter that you come from Skadden or you come from PwC. What matters is that you bring some perspective about an issue that could affect the company that gets them thinking, that's really interesting. I'd love to hear more about that. Or I'm wondering how that could be important to us. Or are others in my company actually thinking about the same thing that this lawyer just brought up? So insights don't even have to be correct, but they do have to be relevant. We've seen our clients win massive contracts by leading with insights that say nothing more than some of our clients are faced with an issue of fill in the blank. Is that affecting you? Now, they might say it is, they might say it's not, but the fact that you brought it up is what creates some separation between you and other firms they're talking to, and creates some relevancy for you to continue a dialogue with the C-suite. The CEO's response might be, it's not something we're facing right now, but we are faced with this other thing. What do you guys think about it? And you might say, I'd love to learn more about that. Let me get back to you. Or maybe you'll have a point of view already to share. But now you're in dialogue with the C-suite. You're learning what matters to them. You're showing them the value that you bring. And going back to that multiple pathways chart I showed earlier, you're creating a pathway to more business. Where do insights come from? They're all around you. They come from your understanding of or your perspective on what we call the COT, challenges, opportunities, and threats facing your prospect or client. And how you think that COT might impact the organization. Your insights will help the executive, will strengthen relationships and enhance value. And your interest in learning their reaction to the insight, remember, you're not stating it as an absolute fact. You're almost stating it as a question, is something that can absolutely accrue positively to you in terms of building that relationship. Go back to the wheel. You're not necessarily demonstrating your technical expertise that would feed into the solution, although you might be. But now you're generating the 31% of understands me, the 24% of chemistry. And you're learning how the 17% of politics matters to that C-suite executive. So you're starting to leverage more of the decision in your favor. We're going to skip this discussion, Bree, because of time. And I want to move on to this concept that I'd like you to be thinking about called intelligence questions. A way to get into a great conversation with the C-suite, and I would suggest it would be with any client or prospect, including the general counsel, is by opening with a question that reveals some of your thinking. And if you want to take a screenshot or take your iPhone and take a picture of 4 sample questions we have on the screen, you might want to do so. All of these show a healthy curiosity in what matters to the senior executive, as well as revealing some of your insights or understanding about issues that might be important to them, that might reflect the VUCA world that they're living in. You may have other examples of how you're using these questions or questions like these to stimulate conversation that are more business focused and less matter focused. That's what we're looking for here. So let me summarize how you can take action within your firm to start to bring some of this into reality. And it kind of reflects the experience that Iker just mentioned in his breakout group. Here's what you do. This is why the good Lord invented pizza and beer. I would bring a bunch of lawyers together, maybe some of your marketing people as well, and have a brainstorming session with a whiteboard. What are the issues now facing the C-suite of your key clients? And in 45 minutes, we gave you 4 minutes a moment ago. In 10 times that time, you will have a list of 20 or more issues that may or may not have legal implications, but they might. When you can take those issues and you can attach to them kind of how they could eventually lead to legal implications that your firm can handle, then your insight becomes even more actionable. It becomes a shorter distance between the conversation and potential business. Oops, sorry, I think I just skipped a slide. Here we go. Then consider questions that you can ask your clients or prospects that fit the model of what we call intelligence questions. I hope you did get a chance to copy some of the questions on a previous slide. Areas of inquiry that you can pose to the C-suite executive that go beyond core legal areas. When you're meeting in your brainstorming group, note where you now have a perspective to share in that area or where you'll need to learn more about it. And if you have any marketing or business development resources in your firm, the larger firms on this call might, smaller firms might not, but enlist those people to help you find this perspective. So we know there's an issue with the government regulations in Turkey. How might that affect legal matters? What would our perspective be on that? Okay, so we'll wrap up and then have some time for some questions. In summary, the C-suite executive is facing internal and external issues that go well beyond direct legal matters, the VUCA world that they're living in. They seek perspective and wisdom to guide them through that turbulence, and they don't care where it comes from. They're just reaching out continually for that kind of guidance. Building these relationships for you provides more growth opportunities, activates more pathways, and puts you in a better position to defend your best relationships. So think about how you can offer the C-suite beyond the general counsel what it wants, which we think are insights, wisdom, and perspective. You can broaden their thinking. You can challenge their assumptions. And when you elevate yourself to a trusted advisor status, you have the right and the obligation even to do this with them, even when you venture outside that silo of law. Before I leave it for your questions, I'm going to make you all an offer. You took the time to attend this. I hope you got some value out of the content that I presented you with. There's much, much more content available to you if you'd like it. And that is in a book that I wrote called Winning is Better, The Journey to New Business Success. It's available in hardcover and Kindle version on Amazon, but I will be happy to send you a free copy of the book, a $19.95 value. All you need to do is message me with your mailing address. The easiest way to do that is probably through LinkedIn. If you do have my email, I'm not sure if Bree distributed that, but I am on LinkedIn. And connect with me or send me a direct message on LinkedIn with your name and your address, and I will send you a copy of the book. And there's my name just to be certain, and there's also my email if you're interested in reaching out. And I'm certainly glad to hear any other questions or comments that you have about the program after we've closed. But we have 8 or 9 minutes by my watch, and we will be happy to hear your questions if you have any.
Bob, great presentation. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing all of this valuable information with us. And if I can just add one question, my question would be how to properly manage the relationship with the general counsel, considering that you're kind of trying to go over him, right? So what's your thought on that?
Well, screw him. I mean, if he's no help to you, just talk to anybody else. No, that's not my official advice. I'm sorry. You guys don't know me well enough to know my sense of humor. You have to keep him in the loop. What I would do, and this applies to any firm in any vertical that has a specific point of contact who wants to expand beyond that. Let them know what you're doing and why you're doing it. But position it as a benefit to the firm, to their firm, not to you. You can easily craft a communication or in conversation with the GC, say, we've got some thoughts. We'd love to get the perspective of your CEO, CFO, COO about it. And of course, yours as well. And you might even ask them to help make the introduction to you. Would you be willing to set up a meeting? Love to have you there, where we can discuss these things. The general counsel might say, what do you want to talk about? So be comfortable with it. I would frame it as, we're having many of these conversations with our clients, and we'd love to get the perspective of your company and their leadership. Can you help set that up for us? So that's your way, and keep them in the loop all along the way. Thank you, here. Any other questions or comments?
I was going to ask something similar, which is, whether you should initiate these conversations organically as you happen to work with other C-suite members as part of your matters that you're working on, or whether you should do what you just discussed with Eker, do an affirmative reach out saying, I'd like to talk about this issue, or I've seen this issue a lot and I'd like to talk with your fellow executives about it. I have found a lot of success in this kind of organic interactions, which lead to broader conversations. But it sounds like you're advocating, be proactive about it, set up the meeting, make it happen. Don't just let it come to you.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to leveraging relationships that you've built as a result of, or through a matter that you were handling. That's a very natural way of going about it. There's a slight risk that if they know you only, they being the C-suite, knows you only as lawyers that handle matters, then it might be even a little bit more difficult to get that general conversation going. So I would encourage anybody that has had contact with the C-suite through a matter to also go beyond the matter. When things are a little quiet after it's been resolved, or whenever that you feel the timing is right, reach out with the sole purpose of changing the conversation to not be just about the matter, but to be about these more important, these also important, not more important, but also important business issues. Does that make sense?
And Bob, I have a comment. So we have some of the attendees that are on the commercial and business side, and this makes complete and total sense. But then we have also practitioners that are in litigation. And sometimes it's not the C-suite. Sometimes it's the client itself that is facing this trouble, that is looking for outside, for somebody to assist him. But I believe that all these principles would apply the same. Like, it's about empathy, and it's about when your client is sitting down with you and facing the problem, it's about your understanding of the problem, your experience of the problem, the added value that you can provide that will make you win his trust and give you the case, right? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, and that's really an example of what real life is about. At the point where a client has the potential need of a litigator, they're talking to firms that can all handle the litigation. It may be a small number of experts, it may be a larger number of experts, but on some level they recognize the fact that any firm they hire ought to do a pretty good job of handling this matter. What's going to differentiate one firm from another, and it goes back to the wheel I showed you at the beginning, is the firm that has registered the best in that other 72% of the decision. So you can call it having the best relationship, you can call it having the best reputation, but it really goes back to, do they believe that you really understand what matters to them, what's at stake to them, and that may create some separation between you and other firms that they're considering. Right.
This, and again, for me, the insight that you shared is phenomenal. The product doesn't sell on its own. You have to be prepared to sell it, even if it's a great product.
Yeah, I mean, you all have great products. But when you talk to decision makers about how they differentiate among firms, it's not often that they'll say, well, I thought they were better capable. They'll say that I thought the firm is very capable, but in the harsh reality, they'll cite other factors than simply your capabilities as to why they
Right.
chose.
Awesome.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, again, if you'd like a copy of the book, connect with me on email or through LinkedIn. Otherwise, Ryan, Bree, Ikar, thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to you guys. It was great fun. I wish you all the best. Stay cool or warm or dry wherever you are, and I hope we get to see you again.
Thank you so much, Bob. And I can't echo Eker enough in saying this was a fantastic presentation. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone else did too. Just on behalf of the Developing Partner section, a reminder, our next networking call is March 6th, 11 Eastern. Thank you again, Bob, for your time, for your expertise. And I've already connected with you on LinkedIn as soon as you click yes.
Here we go. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Bob. And thank you guys, everyone, for joining today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Much.